overnight ICE raid on a Chicago apartment complex days ago when ICE agents wearing fatigues and carrying guns repelled from a Black Hawk helicopter and zip-tied children and U.S. citizens while carrying out arrests.
Hundreds of heavily armed ICE agents, masked up, attacked a single apartment building, broke into that building, rappelled off of a Black Hawk helicopter to get to the roof of the building, then proceeded to go through the building and kick down every single door that they could, take whomever they found into custody, and then, as we know, release some of those people hours later, zip-tying children out in the streets of Chicago, separating them from their families.
Violence, suffering, cruelty, and most importantly, fear are the main driving forces behind the Trump administration's crackdown on the cities, neighborhoods, and communities we all call home. This mass detainment raid of an apartment building in Chicago's South Shore neighborhood should make that painfully obvious for anyone who thinks otherwise.
Right where the light's at. Yeah, all right. Yeah.
Don't worry, Governor Pritzker, we've got it covered from here, and this is just the beginning. Tonight's just the beginning, and we're going to roll on and on. We are going to turn and burn, Governor. We're going from this one to the next, to the next, to the next, until they quit or are all deported and go home. And as far as him, he can either get on board or watch from the sideline.
These images captured by News Nation really highlight the full scope of this operation, as hundreds of heavily armed agents from ICE, Border Patrol, ATF, and the FBI, with the oversight of a Black Hawk helicopter as well, descended on the building, terrorizing residents in the process.
They were talking about how they were treated in this ICE raid. These are the people that, I guess, by virtue of being born here in America, are entitled to being treated like human beings. The second thing is that they were all Black. And I'm going to say something. We saw this coming. Mm-hmm. We knew the neighborhoods where these ICE raids would take place. We knew that there would be collateral damage, that there would be trauma that would be inflicted on our communities. We knew that people would be detained, scared. We knew that children would have to see things that they shouldn't have to see. And all of this for political theater so that we look tough on immigration for everyone. It's a horror show.
The Trump administration took the issue to the Supreme Court. And lo and behold, last month, the court's 6-3 conservative majority voted to just let Trump and ICE continue for now, as the case works its way up, to use racial profiling in their immigration raids, halting the lower court's decision, saying, go ahead. Now, they gave no reasoning or explanation for their decision, silent, except Justice Brett Kavanaugh, who wrote a short concurring opinion saying there's absolutely no problem whatsoever with racially motivated stops by law enforcement. Quote, if the officers learn the individual they stopped is a U.S. citizen or otherwise lawfully in the U.S., they promptly let the individual go.
Race is playing such a massive role in these ICE crackdowns, particularly in this specific case involving the Chicago apartment building, because this regime is straight up racist, okay? It's a white supremacist regime. And that's why it's no surprise to see them, going after communities of color, right? Particularly black and brown people. And it doesn't matter if you are a U.S. citizen, if you came here legally or illegally, they have no problem. In fact, I think they have so much happiness and glee terrorizing individuals, right? Without a moment's notice. Because, there's some gang members, right, that are in this area. So let's just inflict violence on everybody in this building. Let's just do that. Doesn't matter. You got innocent kids out there. This is sick. And there's so many racialized components to this whole ICE raid. When we talk about the people in the building who were harmed and terrorized, like Miss Fisher. She said ICE agents took everyone in the building, including her, and asked questions later. She's got a gun in her face, right? And she said that, listen, they told her if anyone had a warrant, even if it was unrelated to immigration, they would not be released, and that they treated them like they were nothing. That's how they view black and brown people, like we're nothing, like we're less than human. And then you have neighbors like Ebony Watson talking about, they got to duck for cover, right? Because they heard so many flashbangs. And then the fact that kids were crying and kids were zip tied to each other. She said, that's all I kept asking. What is the morality? Where's the human? One of them literally laughed. He was standing right there. He said, F them kids. Do you think they would round up little white children like that and say, F them kids? No. Because they don't view black kids as kids, first of all, or brown kids for that matter. And they view them in a negative way, like they're less than human. And then Marley Sanders is talking about how they had black people in one van and immigrants in another. Her boyfriend was detained. And it's just so incredibly gross what they're doing. And race is playing a central role in this.
And I think what you hear from members of the community is a complete terror, a sense of terror that their community, a working class black and brown community, is being targeted in this way by federal forces using this kind of militarized force. And it is, it's causing, panic and terror and fear all across the community for many. There are people who are not leaving their homes every day out of fear. There are children who are not going to school. Restaurants and cafes and stores in some of our neighborhoods are suffering economically as the result of this fact.
Should children be treated like what? Does Scott Jennings like that?
I don't accept the premise of your question.
All right, cool.
I don't believe that the premise of your question is accurate. I would ask you back. Should children be allowed to live in an apartment building with Trinde Aragua? Should the entire community of Chicago have to live with Trinde Aragua because they hide behind these children?
The logic Scott Jennings used here is exactly how our country has gotten to this point, right? And it's another reminder of how people, right, on the right, who justify cruelty towards and violence inflicted upon innocent people, American citizens or not. The fact that that was his response to what Van Lathan was asking. Should children be treated like that? Should they be subjected to inhumane treatment, right? To that type of terror? And his response is, well, should children be around gang members, right? Should he be around these? That's your comeback? Not the fact that children were harmed in this process and it didn't have to be that way. You're just condoning innocent people being subjected to awful behavior from individuals who have power, whether it's ICE agents, police agents, police officers, I should say, and so on and so forth. People have no empathy. People have no compassion. For Rebel HQ, I'm Chris Williamson. We'll see you next time.